And here we go.
10.
Hydrogen
TLS
burn-off
go for
igniters
four-stage engine
initiated.
start.
7, 6, 5. 4-stage engine start. 3, 2, 1. Boosters in ignition. And liftoff of Artemis 1. We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
An era of fresh space exploration began when NASA's most powerful rocket ever launched sent a spacecraft hurtling toward the moon. In a series of missions that will mark NASA's return to the moon, the unmanned Artemis 1 mission was ultimately launched on November the 16th, after several delays. After only 2 years, the Artemis 2 spacecraft will transport humans into lunar orbit. Artemis 3 is to send humans back to the moon, where they will make history by being the first women and people of color to set foot on the lunar surface. Many experts are skeptical that this mission can be completed by 2025 as planned. They expect some wiggle room in the schedule, but rest assured that Artemis is proceeding. There hasn't been a serious attempt to launch humans into deep space since Apollo's cancellation 50 years ago in 1972. In this video, we will be discussing the first discovery of Artemis 1 by NASA. The Artemis program has several phases, the first of which is Artemis 1, which aims to deliver humans to the moon. It will have been 50 years since Apollo 17's Eugene Cernan made the final lunar footprints in 1972. A lot has changed ever since, and 2022 will recognize the occasion. We now have more computing capability in our pockets than was used to guide the Apollo astronauts to the moon and back safely that year when the first scientific handheld calculator was produced. At last, humanity is getting ready to depart from low Earth orbit, or LEO. Thus, just around a dozen people have become astronauts, and they're all white men. The illustrious ranks of moonwalkers will soon be joined by the first women and people of color to do so. The Artemis program, NASA's initiative to investigate a greater area of the moon's surface than ever before, is responsible for this breakthrough. In 2025, thanks to the improvements from the poor black and white video footage of the 1960s, we may once again watch astronauts walk on the lunar dust. They might serve as role models for the next generation of aspiring astronauts and encourage them to aim high. However, a brand new launch method and some rehearsal time is required to accomplish this next moonshot. NASA's enormous SLS rocket will make its first flight on the unmanned Artemis 1. The Orion capsule, powered by the new mega rocket, will go around the moon in around 4 weeks. In 2024, if all goes as planned, the Artemis 2 mission will transport astronauts on a circumlunar journey to the moon and back. By utilizing SpaceX's Starship, Artemis 3 will land astronauts on the moon close to the South Pole. The timeline for this historic flight is set for the years 2025 and 2026. Orion will be propelled through the Earth's atmosphere by 2 massive solid rocket boosters and a core stage with 733,000 gallons of fuel. The ICPS upper stage of the SLS will then ignite to propel Orion toward the moon. When the ICPS is activated, it'll have a secondary purpose, the deployment of 10 miniature CubeSats that are riding shotgun on Artemis 1. One of these tiny satellites is BioSentinel, whose objective is to transport yeast samples beyond low Earth orbit. The goal is to learn as much as possible about radiation and its effects on living things in order to better protect astronauts on future Artemis missions. Once Orion is free of the ICPS, it'll be pushed and powered by European Space Agency's European Service Module, or ESA. A gap of 26 to 42 days is planned for Artemis 1's absence. It'll take Orion around a week to 2 weeks to reach the moon, when it will make a near flyby and use the moon's gravity to propel itself into far retrograde orbit. If a planet is in retrograde, its orbit around the moon will be counter to the direction in which the moon rotates. 16 to 29 days will pass while Orion is in that orbit. Then it'll make a U-turn and head back toward the moon to get a second boost of energy to get it back to Earth in 9 to 19 days. Even though Artemis 1 won't be carrying any people, nevertheless has an outstanding crew. Mannequin Commander Munikin Campos, outfitted with the Orion Crew Survival System, a radiation-resistant suit, will sit in the captain's chair. For the duration of the trip, 2 radiation sensors would record the levels of radiation. After Arturo Campos, an electrical engineer who played a crucial role in the successful return of the Apollo 13 crew to Earth, we've called our new moonkin Campos. Thanks to studies conducted by the German Space Agency, Campos will be joined on the Orion by 2 virtual female astronauts, or DLR. It has been decided that Zohar, one of the mannequins, will wear a STEMRAD radiation protection vest. Helga, the other, will have to brave the world unguarded. While we'll be strapping the dummies in, we also need to see how well they perform in a weightless environment. According to the NASA announcement, they are carrying a zero-gravity indicator in the form of a plush Snoopy doll, wearing the famous orange NASA flight suit. The lunar module of Apollo 10 was affectionately christened Snoopy, continuing the comic strip character's long relationship with the moon. Sean, everyone's favorite stop-motion sheep, is also joining the crew of the Artemis 1. The European Space Agency, or ESA, arranged for a plush doll of a smart Shropshire lamb to ride to the moon on board the Orion spacecraft. The ESA also constructed the service module that would provide the necessary energy for the journey. The many scholars who have spent over 2 decades working on this project have faced several challenges along the way. Keeping the momentum going under 4 different administrations has been difficult. Over the years, the United States human spaceflight program has been reshaped by the administrations of Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden, with the agency's targets shifting from the moon to an asteroid and back to the moon. There has been some wiggle room in the Artemis schedule as well. For instance, President Trump originally planned for the first crewed lunar landing to occur in 2024. There have been plenty of those who think the Artemis mission is a waste of money and time to send humans back to the moon, since humanity has previously deployed an army of robotic spacecraft to both orbits and driven all across the lunar surface. Some argue that there is no point in going back. After Artemis 1, if all goes to plan, a second mission, Artemis 2, will launch to bring humans around the moon and back in 2024. Then in 2025 or 2026, astronauts will touch down near the lunar South Pole as part of the Artemis 3 mission. Spaceships carrying supplies and astronauts could one day fill the region between Earth and the moon. Amazon and Blue Origin founder Jeff Bezos has proposed that humans establish a permanent industrial presence on the moon. This would free up living space on Earth and shift our environment-polluting equipment to where there is really not even an atmosphere, the idea goes. Experts also suggest that the moon would provide a great launching pad for missions to other planets in the solar system. The sheer magnitude of the SLS illustrates how challenging it is to break free of the planet's gravitational pull. It is far simpler to escape the moon's gravity, which is only 6 times that of Earth. The moon also contains massive quantities of water. Since H2O is the chemical formula for oxygen, it follows that there must be plenty of it present if there is water. Researchers have calculated that the oxygen content of the moon's surface alone is sufficient to support 8 billion people for 100,000 years. Since liquid oxygen may be used as rocket fuel, mining the moon could eventually lead to the establishment of interplanetary gas stations for use by interplanetary ships. That's why we're setting up Artemis Base Camp near the moon's south pole. As it stands, we have no doubts about the water availability there. Additionally, the moon's south pole enjoys favorable sunlight, being illuminated for roughly 90% of the year, as opposed to the remainder of the moon, which has 2 weeks of sunlight followed by 2 weeks of night. In the case of a solar-powered lunar base, that's excellent news. Because of the abundance of both water and sunshine in the area, it is possible that one day rocket ships would routinely refuel in the vicinity of Artemis Base Camp before taking off for destinations like Mars and the asteroid belt. Jim Bridenstine, the former head of NASA, is certain that sending humans to the moon is crucial to evolving into an interplanetary species. He has stated that before humans can go on the first multi-year expedition to Mars, they need to spend many decades in orbit and on the moon's surface to gain operational competence for undertaking long-term work and sustaining life far away from Earth. Everything we do is a step towards reclaiming our roots. When massive stars like the ones in the Milky Way perish, they burst out the iron and calcium that make up your blood and bones, scattering them over the cosmos. The atoms eventually become part of conscious beings with aspirations of interstellar travel and the wherewithal to construct cathedral-sized rocket ships. The launch of Artemis 1 this year may seem like a minor accomplishment, but don't underestimate its significance. This could be remembered in history books as the turning point when humanity once again set its sights on the moon. That's all for today's video. Leave your thoughts on the first discovery of Artemis 1. Also take a minute out and subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned, see you soon.